Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Fintech Show. Now on today's episode, we're going to be finding out about how payments have changed due to improvements in transaction monitoring by using technologies such as artificial intelligence, cloud-based platforms, and automation. And joining me here today, we have a number of guests right at the heart of this industry question. We spoke with Jethro MacDonald from SmartStream Technologies, who told us how transaction monitoring has changed due to the wealth of innovations happening in the payments industry currently. Also dialing into the studio earlier in the month, we had Otto Benz from Nationwide Building Society, who underlined how important automation and cloud were to enabling a better payments experience for their customers or their members. Last but not least, we spoke with Nicolas Cailly from Société Générale to find out more. Nicolas, how are you doing here today?
Hello, Doug. I'm doing very well, thank you.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on, and I'd wonder if you could give a bit of an introduction to yourself in terms of your role and what you're working on at Société Générale for our audience, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually heading what we call the payments and cash management franchise for SocGen as a group. So what we're doing here is we are serving all large corporate customers across the world in terms of managing their payments and collections and optimizing or supporting them, helping them in optimizing their treasury needs and forecasts all over the place, multi-country, multi-bank, multi-currencies.
That's absolutely incredible, and it must be such an incredible job, especially because of the huge changes that are happening in payments right now. The industry seems to have galvanized over the last 20 years, and now corporates are right at the forefront of that with higher volumes than ever, and especially the high values that you associate with corporate banking. So Nicolas, could you tell our audience what you've seen change in the payments industry over the last couple of years?
Well, we could spend hours. The changes in the last couple of years have been tremendous. What we see in payments, maybe it's not a revolution, but it's a very, very, very important evolution. We see, as you said, Doug, the volumes of payments, number of payments that we need to process is exponential. It's growing extremely fast, over 2 digits per year, depending on the geographies, obviously. But not only that, also the fact that because of new techs, because of new customer habits, because of new regulatory requirements, because of new actors coming in the picture, there is a very, very strong momentum for everybody to bring new services, to make new investments, to add value to the payment chains. What we can see today is a tremendous change of the whole payment industry everywhere in the world.
Absolutely amazing. Now, Otto, for our audience who might not be aware, could you tell us a bit more about your role at Nationwide? What do you think is driving these changes? Why are we now seeing global standards such as ISO 20022 coming in, and also RTP, request to pay? Why is this all happening now?
So I think the driving the change is a combination of things, and really regulatory and technology changes, and then user demand. And regulatory changes really happen because people really genuinely underneath it are collaborating to ask for these changes. There's a demand for them as well. And I think ultimately it goes to the fact that payments is a collaborative ecosystem. You're sending a payment from A to B or requesting a payment, and you need to collaborate on what's the format of that payment and how is it best enabled. And there is underneath it all a demand for more data in the payment itself. And the regulators respond to that, and they say, well, you need to have standards or apply standards to facilitate competition. And then it's pushed industry into formalizing a proper time frame for those standards to exist. So I think that's part of it. That's part of it. And then the other part of it is around the market itself and the technology evolving, and then allowing and facilitating different types of payments and different mechanisms.
What do we see today? We see very fundamental projects such as the ISO 20022, and I'm sure you will like to come back on this one, But more than that, we also see requirements from our clients, a demand from our clients for instantaneity, for transparency, for rich information, and for us working with them, bringing more value to the payments we are processing with them. And that's how we are investing, putting us in the shoes of our clients, bringing them more value, more added services around the core payment itself.
The volume of data that you receive is unlike anything that the fintechs have to deal with. So how can these new technologies that you yourself have helped institute within SocGen, like artificial intelligence, automation, but especially cloud, helping you deal with those volume of payments?
Yeah. That's a difficult question. Thank you, Doug.
They all are, hopefully.
That's a difficult question. So you're right. We're managing megabytes and terabytes of data, and there is tremendous value in it. What we are good at SocGen, and I must say what banks are good at, is using that data with artificial intelligence, with cloud-based services, for doing one thing that is absolutely key, which is protecting the clients and the payments from fraud, for instance. So in terms of data usage and AI usage, we are very strong for fraud. And I must say, I'm touching wood, obviously. This is an endless game and an endless challenge that we must meet. So that's one thing.
So I'm Jethro MacDonald. I'm the product manager of AI machine learning in our innovation lab at SmartStream. So really what I look to do is how we can use the latest technology in our suite of products to better our products and also improve the process for our clients. Yeah, of course. I mean, the beauty of the cloud is obviously you have a number of different services available to you out there. So one of the things that we've looked to utilize in our solution is AWS's Textract, which allows us to actually scan PDF documents and take the information within that document. So even if it's a scanned version of a receipt, we can pull all that information out. Obviously from a regulatory reporting point of view, what's quite powerful is, depending on the number of trades you do, you could be an institution like a big tier one who's doing hundreds of thousands trades per day. With cloud technology, it's very easy to scale up when you need the power to match and then scale right back down. So it's a really cost-effective way of using that technology, but also with the added benefit of all the services that you get as well, being in the cloud.
Now, a lot of the institutions that we speak with here at Fintech Finance operate at scale. So how can some of SmartStream's cloud-based tools enable these institutions to reconcile the data at scale?
Of course, so one of the things that's really exciting about cloud computing is the ability to use multiple machines as and when you need that technology. So one of the things that we're working on at the moment is streamlining our matching process and also the data that we're looking at. So we're not looking at, reconciling millions of rows, we're looking in the region of billions of rows. And the really smart way of using this technology is you can scale up exactly when you need it, fire up loads more machines, do all your matching, and then scale right back down. So obviously with reconciliation, it's very exhaustive at the point that you're doing matching. So it's a very smart use of the technology. So not only can you reconcile these massive volumes, but you're also doing it in a very efficient and cost-effective way.
What's the value add for technologies like automation for your customer and then also for you on the back end? How is it actually helping you, and how is it also not just streamlining things, but it's actually technologies like artificial intelligence, automation, as I've already brought up, can actually start bringing extra value to a payment?
I think, again, the types of automation that we have, that they do fit into two camps. They fit into the boring camp, and they fit into the exciting and innovative camp. And actually, you still need both. In the boring camp, the tools that we're still implementing and still putting in place to try and improve the flow of payments, for example, international payments, where things need to be checked, where they need to be, manual intervention needs to happen because the current message formats don't allow full straight-through processing.
Yeah.
Things like robotics processing, just helps with those things while the mass of payments goes through completely without touching the side. you still require some automation to make those things work. On the other side, the interesting side and the amusing side, there's a lot of effort and a lot of thought going into that value add which you just asked about. What can AI do? I think AI can help with fraud checks. It can help with putting specific interventions and suitable friction in some of the processing that customers need when they're making a payment. A lot of the problems that we see now are social engineering issues, where people are persuaded to make payments to people that seems reasonable at the time, it seems like something they need to do, and they're persuaded to make the payment. And it's only when they're interrupted in their thought process that they're made to think about whether this is something that they really should be doing, these payments are stopped, these fraudulent payments are stopped. And that's where I think some of the new technologies can really help, because just providing a standard message, asking somebody, are you sure that these are the details of your payment? Do you know this person? It's probably not good enough to prevent some of the frauds that we're seeing.
So with that in mind, we're seeing regulations such as MiFID II, MiFIR come in. How can artificial intelligence actively be used currently to help these institutions, these organizations, deal with these regulatory changes?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, we're helping them quickly onboard some of the controls that they need using AI. So if they've got their front office system and the regulator, we can easily work out how that data comes together and present back a control if they need to meet a regulatory deadline or anything like that. We also are looking at, how we can use AI to then tell us how the data comes together across multiple entities to see if there are any reporting differences that a firm might have between their peers. And this is huge, right? There's validation rules and things like that in place at the moment in regulation, but that doesn't actually tell you whether what you're reporting is necessarily correct versus your peers. So it's a really good use of AI.
Yeah, having that single view, a single version of truth across multiple different platforms, that must be the key. I mean, what does visibility do, and how can artificial intelligence actually provide that view?
Yeah, of course. So I mean, if you've got enough data, and AI really is a lot more powerful with the more data you have. So in the transaction reporting world, if you have all these different transactions from loads of different entities, you can actually look across and see how different firms are reporting this. And you can flag then versus your peer if there's any gaps, or if you're reporting something slightly differently, where from a validation point of view there's nothing wrong, but actually versus the market you might be off.
Could you tell our audience a bit more about SmartStream Air, please?
Yeah, of course. So SmartStream Air is our AI reconciliation tool. So it's a fully cloud-native technology, and we're using the latest AI and machine learning to help clients. So one of the things that we've heard from our clients is about the painful onboarding process for implementing new reconciliations. And what we utilize is AI to actually tell us how that data comes together. And if a client then wants to change that or amend that, they can easily do that, but it really speeds up that whole process. And then on top of that, what we have is the machine learning. So when they're doing their manual day-to-day tasks, the system actually learns from the matches that they're doing and then proposes matches back to them based on that logic. So it's a really clever use of the technology.
I know we've been talking about obviously the improved data that you can find behind a payment, and I know ISO 20022 standards are going to enhance the amount of data behind each payment message. But what's the value going to be for the customer once banks really across the world start sending payments in that messaging format?
So I think there are 2 or 3 immediate benefits to ISO messaging, and some of them are quite small. The ability to track international payments end to end, with new, guaranteed references through UETR on Swift, actually it's quite useful. Even now it sounds a bit archaic, but international payments take a long time and sometimes they don't work, and it's quite invisible. You can't see where a payment is held up. Just providing the basic facilities to track end to end for individuals and their financial institutions will really help, and it'll help accuracy, it'll help speed it up, it'll help reduce overhead, and it'll reduce costs. Other things within the message formats that will be mandated in the UK and elsewhere, should help understand who you're sending your payment to. If it's an institution, it should reduce the effort required to check the payment is allowed to take through sanctions processing, for example, because the parties will be more easily identifiable. And I think all of these things just help smooth up the speed, make it faster, make it more straight through processed, and you'll be able to detect issues more easily.
Obviously with MiFID II, its reaches are really global, because any organisation interacting with, for instance, European markets need to comply. So how does SmartStream look at that in a globally holistic sense and enable firms to reconcile across the world?
Yeah, of course. So I mean, depending on whatever your regulatory need might be, so there might be entities that are, as you say, actually based somewhere else geographically, but they have an entity in Europe, for example. We're more than willing to help them with any reconciliation needs they have. And also, we're mindful that the regulation isn't just European-centric, but there's loads of different regulation going on across the globe, and we could help them out with whatever that might be. So we're always looking at how we can improve our tool and create new products that will help them with their day-to-day controls that they must do.
Let's look into reconciliation, what this means for the institutions and your back-end processes. When money is moving around that quickly, how can you look at reconciling and making sure that the volumes and the values are properly attributed at the end of the day?
Okay, I could answer in a lot of details to that question, but as I was saying, 99.9 something % of our payments are fully automated today. And if they are fully automated, it's because at every point in the process, from one system to another, it's fully reconciled and checked against the initial order. So we are sure that whatever we send to the clearing systems is the proper transaction and is natively reconciled with the initial order. ISO 20022 will help us be even better in that, because it will be carrying more information. It will also be carrying more information that will be very useful for the compliance checks, the automated compliance checks. So all in all, automation will progress. And it's not a question of volume in itself, considering that we are investing on very robust cloud technologies that we can scale up, I would say, as much as we need in minutes rather than days. So volume we can cope with as long as we have the proper information in the payments that is carried for reconciliation and for any check that we need to do before processing the payment end to end.
Where do you see the future of reconciliation going, and how can SmartStream fit into that?
Yeah, of course. Well, one of the things I mentioned earlier is I really like the idea of utilizing AI to actually tell us how people are reporting differently and give them a view back on where they might be different to their peers. I think that's a really powerful part, because we talked about earlier how we've got that reconciliation where you can check what's in your source system right down to the regulator, and then you've got the ability to check whether reporting decisions are correct.
Yeah.
What you don't have is that means to tell you whether it's correct against your peers, and it's a fully rounded kind of control that we're looking to implement for our clients. So that's what really excites me.
Where do you see the payments industry for corporates and commercial banking going in the future? What's going to be the next biggest thing?
Well, the next biggest thing, or maybe the graal of the payments industry, is to disappear. And let me explain that. When you are processing a payment as an individual, and that's the same for a corporate processing a payment for their company, what you want is to press a button, so you or press a button, or not even press a button, by the way, to decide to execute a payment. And at the second you've decided it, you want that payment to be executed and credited to the end account. And you don't want to see all the intermediaries in between. You don't want to see the bank. You don't want to see the correspondent bank. You don't want to see anything in between. You just want to be sure that it's been executed. You've got the debit on your bank account. You are absolutely certain that there is the same credit on the bank account on the other side. And when you are absolutely certain and you have confidence and trust that this is always executed in seconds with no mistake at all, you don't even need to have transparency on the payment. It's done. You've got a debit on your side, and all the intermediaries have disappeared from that chain. You know, everything that is simple, the more simple it appears, the more complex it is on the background. But that's what we need to go for. We need to disappear for the client. The payment's being executed, no worry about it. It's certain, it's secure, it's done in a fraction of seconds. We don't care how many intermediaries there is behind. And I think that's the vision and the growl. And of course, there's going to be some work to get there.
That's all we've got time for in today's episode of the Fintech Show. I want to say a massive thank you to our guests, Nicolas, Otto and Jethro, for providing the insights here today. Now you can catch the rest of the series and much more over at ffnews.com and of course YouTube, but especially LinkedIn, where you'll see me and my guests in the comments. Thank you once again and goodbye.